The Federal Reserve announced back in mid-March that for the first time ever in the last couple of years, they were going to be moving up interest rates 0.25%. It then followed it up earlier this month on May 4th that they would be raising rates another 0.5%, which is the largest increase in the last 2 decades, which is like, 2/3 of my life. That's pretty significant. Now, obviously, this is the Fed's way of combating a little thing we know as inflation, because in the last 2 years, home prices have shot up 34%, and we're seeing increases across the board on everything that we're buying on a daily basis. Ultimately, demand is incredibly high right now, and there's just simply not enough supply, leading to one of the craziest real estate frenzies ever. So today we're going to be talking about interest rates and the impact that they're having on short-term rentals, and if now's a good time to buy or if you should wait to get started on your Airbnb journey. Look, I've been doing Airbnb now for about 5 years or so, and back in the day, like when I was getting started, those were the golden days. Those was the Wild West of Airbnb. Well, actually the Wild West was like 10 years ago when the platform first came out. That's when a lot of money was being made, but a lot of things were still being developed and philosophies were still being formed and POVs were still being formed. Philosophies and POVs, pretty much the same thing, honestly. And if you fast forward to the last 2 or 3 years of my Airbnb career, those were my golden years as a host. That's when I was making the most money. I could go out and I could get a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% return, sometimes 100% returns or 200% returns, depending on what kind of units I was listing, like glamping units, for example. Those have very fast paybacks, and I was making really great money doing that. And if you were to examine the interest rates of my current portfolio, you'd be probably a little annoyed. Casa Conejo, I think my interest rate on that is a 2.75. In Los Angeles, California, my main house, the interest rate on that is 3.25. On my chalet and my cottage out in Gatlinburg, my interest rate on that is 2.75% for 30 years. It's very funny because when I got to 3.25%, I was really annoyed by that because there were a lot of interest rates floating around at the time at the 2.75 and the 3% range. And so when I got to 3.25%, I was like, oh, I can't bear to spend $400 more a year on interest. And now I would do some dirty things to have 3.25% again. And fast forward to the latest property I just closed on, my $3.25 million Spanish mansion in Scottsdale, Arizona closed at a whopping 6.25%. Now, on a $200,000 to $300,000 house, that extra 2% from that 4.25% interest rate I was telling you about, not really gonna change much for you, not really gonna change your life. It's gonna be a couple hundred more every single year in interest. But on a $3 million plus house, going from 4.25 to 6.375, it's very, very significant. But guess what? I still bought it. And if you stick around into the very end, I'm actually gonna math out deals. I wanna show you the difference that interest rates can make on your return and how you should look at a deal and evaluate a deal and see if a deal still pencils out and if it's worth investing in. So that brings us to the really big question, the question that everyone is asking me these days, which is, are the days of 30 to 50, 60, 70% cash on cash returns over? And the answer to that is maybe. Maybe it's not so practical to go out and get a 50% cash on cash return anymore because housing prices have gone up. We just talked about in the article, they've gone up 37%. Should check me, Caleb, if I was wrong about that. But they've gone up 37%. Interest rates have gone from 2.5, 2.75 from when I was first getting started to upwards of 6%. Yeah, I mean, it's probably unrealistic to expect getting super juicy returns just straight off the MLS, because guess what? If you find a killer cutie property, which is a really great combination, a killer cutie house, then guess what? Other people have found that as well, and they've already put an offer in, and likely a better offer than you. And guess what? Someone else came in, put an all cash offer in, and they not only swiped it from both of you, but the other 30 people that put an offer on that house. So with that in mind, what I want you to know is that you have to go and find the deal. You have to work extra hard to find a deal, okay? The day of crazy high inventory where there weren't insane bidding wars going on, they're probably over, and you're probably gonna have to go and find a house in an undiscovered city.
Latits.
What? Sure. No, that's not right.
Or small town or rural town. I mean, if you just look at my favorite 4 places to invest, I talk about this all the time. National parks, state parks, vacation destinations, eclectic towns. I love investing in these spots because they aren't so quite on the nose like other huge metropolitan areas. And a lot of the times, oh man, I didn't even check my hair before this.
Oh my God, okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay
Anyways, I like investing in those 4 quadrants, if you will, but one of the things that come along with those 4 quadrants are that there may not be a lot of comps to support you buying a house in the small town where there are no other Airbnbs. So that can be a little bit risky, right? But for me, I always know that if I go in and buy a house and do my thing and professionally furnish it and take great photos and just follow all of my own hosting philosophies and principles, I'm probably gonna do pretty well. But I also have a 14-unit portfolio that will pick up the slack of a swing that I might have taken that didn't pan out. So far, that hasn't happened. And I guess since I'm talking about finding the deal and the art of the deal and getting into the perfect Airbnb and short-term rental, you just have to know what to do. So if you're looking for guidance on that, if you want the A to Z blueprint on how I do it, consider enrolling in HostCamp. It's my 12-month mentorship program. It's 80 plus videos. There are monthly live coaching calls with me. There's a very, very active Facebook community where people are partnering up all the time and like over 20 hours of content or something like that. So if you're interested and you want to book a call with my team to see if it's right for you, head on over to hostcamp.com or you can hit the link in my description below. Anyways, let's get back to the video here. Look, the point I'm trying to make here is simply this. It's hard to find a very nice cash flowing, high cash on cash return asset right now. And what that means is you are gonna have to spend more time looking for properties. So if you were casually putting offers in before and you haven't been getting them, that means that you're just gonna have to put in more offers. And if I were you, I'd be putting out way more offers. I see so many of my colleagues, my peers, my students that are really just over scrutinizing 2 houses, and one is a 25% and the other one's a 27%. And they're like, I don't know, I mean, this one has this. Put an offer on both, dude. Like, put an offer on any house that pencils out under your criteria and stop overthinking it. That's what we're all like getting in our heads right now. We're all like, oh, the Airbnb market is oversaturated, the economy is tanking, we're heading into a recession, interest rates are high. This one's a 27%, this one's a 25%. I mean, look, is it a $15 difference every single year? I mean, yeah, but I should still think about it, right? No, dude, just make the offer. Make the offer on multiple houses. If you're not able to get into a house, it's because you're not putting enough offers out there. So that's one, put more offers out there. If you want to get into escrow, put more offers out there. Let's rewind and put a counter in there for every time I said make an offer. 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 It's my Nicolas Cage. If I have to explain it, it's not a very good impression. Moving on, because my ADHD-ness is kicking in. Outside of making more offers, something else that you're gonna have to do is you might have to consider a value add. All right, and so what that means is you might find a house that needs $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of work. Now, a lot of people are willing to do that amount of work because anything in the $5,000 to $20,000 range is typically gonna be a little bit of an easier lift. So you're competing with other people who are willing to put in the work. So maybe this means that you go for something that needs $30,000 to $50,000 worth of work. Now, there are some obvious implications here, right? Because if you put in more cash in a deal, that might mean that your cash on cash is gonna tank. Unless you do a cash out refi and you do what I call a burster.
TM. Did you just trademark that? What?
That's a verbal trademark, that's an agreement.
A burr into an STR and you're able to pull your cash back out. Other thing is, it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a lot of time to rehab a house. Whether you find contractors, you do the contracting yourself, it could take 3 to 6 months to renovate a house that needs $30,000 or $50,000 worth of work. On top of that, it's just your personal time. Outside of just the contracting, you're taking away your personal time from your family and your job and everything that you might have going on. I just recently broke my own rule of only buying luxury property and made an offer on a house that was $182,000 that was gonna need about $100,000 worth of work. Now I had planned on pulling out that cash in a burster like I talked about, a cash out refi, but I also understood that I was gonna be putting a lot of time into it. The reason I wanted that specific property is that it was just had a look to it. And for me, I'm always looking for what I call a portfolio piece, something that I can be very proud of. So while it didn't necessarily make practical sense to buy that house, I just knew in order to stand out on Airbnb and crush my competition, I just had to have a very unique property that was gonna be really, really nice in the top 10% of its market. And even beyond these things of making more offers and finding a value add, maybe you just have to accept a lower return. Maybe you have to be okay with the 25%. And maybe you have to realize that a 25% is still an amazing return. Again, as I always say, a typical long-term rental right now is bringing in anywhere from 6 to 10%, sometimes a 20%, although a little bit more rare. If you're a long-term investor and you're getting 20% cash on cash, please let me know in the comments down below. Always love hearing from you guys. But again, average stock market return in a really, really great year is gonna be about 10%. So if your return can be 2 to 2.5 times better than a typical stock return or long-term rental, then you should consider that that's insane. And a lot of people are getting very picky with short-term rentals right now, and they're like, oh, a 23%? No. I only do 50%. I hear that every day, and I'm like, just wanna shake them, and I just wanna be like, just Why? Who told you that? Not me. I mean, maybe they hear me talking on the channel. And admittedly, a lot of people see my channel and the success that I've had, and they want to replicate that, which is very fair and flattering. But you know, investing in Airbnb 3 to 5 years ago versus today is starting to become more apples to oranges than apples to apples. So maybe let's just dampen our expectations a bit and just understand that we're in a different market today, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of money to be made on Airbnb. So with that said, with rising interest rates, one of the main questions is, should I buy this? And I will answer your question with my own question, which is, does it pencil out? What I mean by this is, if you set your own return profile, if you say, I want to make it 20%, or let's get crazy here, let's say 30%, theoretically, it shouldn't matter what your interest rate is. Now, I'm not saying go out and get a 40% interest rate on a mortgage, but what I do mean is, if you say, I want a 25% return, and you run it through my short-term rental spreadsheet, which is available for you to download for free in the description down below, and you hit that 25% return, then it shouldn't matter if your interest rate is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%, because it's still penciling out at the return profile that you set yourself. So to me, of course, I do want a lower interest rate, but if I'm still hitting my marks in my analysis and it's checking all the boxes for me otherwise, then I'm still gonna buy it, even if it's a 6.375% interest rate on a $3.25 million house, because on that house, I'm still gonna get a 20% cash on cash return, and that includes a 7% management fee, and on top of that, 20% is typically lower than what I'm going for, but on a $3.25 million house, that's massive, and I'm getting so many tax breaks and bonus depreciation because I'm gonna be able to run cost segregation studies and accelerate my depreciation, and I'll be able to slice and dice a significant portion of the taxes that I owe, my personal tax bill, due to the size and price of that house, which is why cash on cash is very important. But whenever I factor in a lot of that other stuff I just talked about, and appreciation and debt pay down, then my return really goes from a 20% to a 40% ROI when you look at it from the very top level big picture, which is very hard to do when we're all on the ground level just focusing on cash return. All right, well, full disclosure, for the rest of the video, I might look a little different because it's gonna be a whole different day because I've been talking for a long time and my voice hurts. I recently got very sick. I got what's called the peritonsillar abscess. I wouldn't even look it up. It was really gross. It was very not great on my vocal cords, so I gotta take it easy. And I realized I probably could have just not said any of that, but sometimes I like to update you on my life. Sue me. All right, see you in a second. Like literally in a second. See? Told you. Actually, it all looks... No, I'm just kidding. It's the same day. All right, see you in a second. Okay, it's the next day. I'm feeling refreshed and rested up. So let's get back into it. I think what I wanted to put into perspective from a lot of the things that I was just talking about with interest rates is that while interest rates might be seemingly high at the moment, what I do want you to consider that back when I was a wee lad in the 90s, interest rates in 1990 were actually at 10.13%, but they slowly fell, finally dipping below 7% to come in at 6.94% in 1998. So in the 90s, it actually wasn't completely uncommon to have interest rates from 6.5% to 10%. Actually, going back a little bit further here, it's actually really quite interesting. Interest rates reached their highest point in modern history in 1981 when the annual average was 16.63%, which is a hard money loan, like even an expensive hard money loan today in 2022. Right now, a hard money loan, which is typically private money, is gonna cost you between 10 and 12%, which a lot of people also think are super ludicrous. I'm not gonna get on a soapbox right now as to why hard money loans may work for some people in certain flipping and rehab scenarios, but I do want you to know that historically speaking, interest rates, have been much higher than they are by today's rates. All right, I did this in the complete wrong order, but I'm looking at an article now. I keep scrolling back. Really should have started here, but rates in 1971 were in the mid 7% range, and they moved up steadily until they were at 9.19% in 1974. All right, so that just goes back to my point here that interest rates have always been a little bit on the higher side, and guess what? This might blow your mind. I mean, just sit back and try to take this in. But guess what? In 1970, 1980, and 1990, you know what type of person still existed that exists today? Real estate investors. There have been real estate investors literally since the beginning of real estate and landlording and owning property and renting it out. Like, the concept of real estate investors isn't new. It's not like interest rates hit 3 or 4% 10 years ago and then all of a sudden a new breed of entrepreneur materialized and said,
oh my goodness, I see an opportunity here. Interest rates are at 3%, and thus I'm going to build a real estate empire and be the first person that's ever done this ever.
All right, so obviously I'm being a little salty and hyperbolic here, but hopefully you get my point. Anyways, tangent, but basically what I'm trying to communicate here is I wouldn't necessarily let interest rates deter you from investing in real estate if it's still a good deal. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. And also, I understand that interest rates right now might be affecting your overall cash on cash return, which is a metric that's very important in real estate, but it's not the only metric that matters. Because for me, what I'm understanding is that when I first started in my real estate journey, I was so focused on cash return that I was really missing the big picture. And that big picture is that appreciation is really where I'm building all of my wealth. It's the equity that I have in my different properties. So cash flow is very important. I think I said this last video, maybe 2 videos ago, but if we just examine how much money I've made in the last year from real estate, my cash flow adds up to about $300,000 for the year. My appreciation on all my portfolio has gone up $400,000, so it's actually outpaced the cash flow. Now, separately, they're both really great figures, but together, they're a very powerful thing. $700,000 is effectively what I've made this year in real estate. That's not something to ignore. And a big piece of that $700,000 was from the appreciation. So whenever you're evaluating deals, I do sort of want you to try not to be so honed in on just the cash on cash metric. And please try to understand that appreciation and tax benefits and deductions and debt pay down all really play into your overall ROI. So sure, something might be let's say an 18%, but when you factor in those other things that I was telling you about, that 18% cash on cash return can very easily turn into a 36% overall ROI, which is a much more impressive and beautiful number than 18%. So to reiterate, I want to beat you over the head with this because I say it a lot and I mean it. Appreciation is arguably more important than cash flow. So you should really be considering that in your overall equation when penciling out a deal. Now, with all of that said, what I want to do is I want to jump into my little investment spreadsheet here, and I actually want to walk you through how your return might change with different interest rates. Is that cool? You cool with that? Well, you don't have a choice because you're watching my video. I mean, I guess you could click away, but I mean, at this point, you made it to the end of the video, so you might as well just wait out the next 10 seconds. All right, well, maybe like 2 minutes, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know. Please don't hate me. It's probably gonna be a little bit longer than that. So as a gentle reminder, this spreadsheet that I've made, I use it for literally all of my deals. It's very basic, but it does the job superbly well. It's free. It's completely free to you. All you have to do is click the link in my description down below. Then you can have access to this and use it to analyze all of your deals. So let's just put in like a standard deal for me right now, $500,000. I mean, I'm spending a little bit more these days, but for the sake of this video, and then let's assume that you're even doing a 20% down payment. Okay, so let's say that this place is maybe 2,000 square feet. So we're gonna spend about $20,000 on furniture, and let's say legal is gonna cost you, I mean, $1,500 is usually when I'm doing partnerships, $750 to form an LLC, get everything filed. And then your setup fee is really, your flights, your rental cars, all the money that it'll cost you to actually travel out to your Airbnb to get it set up. So all in, we are looking at $133,750. And then right now, I'm gonna leave the interest rate at 4.5 to just sort of show you here what we're working with. So let's assume this is the house. I'm gonna take out the HOA fee, and yeah, okay, so we should be good here. So on this deal, I'm typically gonna be looking for a 20% return. So relatively speaking, I mean, obviously this is gonna depend from house to house. $350 at a 75% occupancy would get me $95,000 in expenses and about a 20% cash on cash return. Actually, there are a few things here that I can probably change. So let's take out the management fee. Let's say that you're self-managing here. Okay, so 24%. So I even have a little bit of wiggle room. So let's say we're at 325 at 75% occupancy, 5% maintenance costs, and your cleaning fees are $200, $1,400. Okay, so right now we are looking at a roughly 20% cash on cash return. What I want you to pay attention to is this 19.84% figure and how it's gonna change with all the different interest rates, okay? So if it goes up to 5%, it goes down to 18.75. So it goes down about 1%. Caleb, maybe you can just notate that for me. And then let's just see what it looks like at 5.5. It goes down to 17.64%, which again is, I think, roughly about another percent. Okay, so now let's get into today's scary territory where the world is ending and we're about to hit a recession and interest rates are so high and there's no way that a deal could possibly comp out. Well, let's just look at the difference here. It goes down 16.5%, okay? This is probably a standard deal right now. And just for, shits and giggles, we'll put 6.5 as the interest. And now we're down to 15.34%, meaning your payback is gonna be 78 months, all right? So it's gonna take you roughly 6.5 years to pay this back. Caleb, thank you. So now let's just look at the difference between the high side and what things were at a couple of months ago. So we got 6.5 to 4.5. So 19.84%, let's keep this exact, minus 15.34. It's a 4.5% difference on your cash on cash return, but I also want you to keep in mind that you're paying more interest technically, and thus your mortgage interest will be a higher deduction, meaning, technically you'll end up paying less in taxes. So now that we've looked at the actual percentage difference, which we've seen that the cash on cash cash from 4.5% to 6.5% is 4.5%. Let's look at the actual dollar number and see how that changes, okay? So what I want you to pay attention to right here is this total payment to partner yearly, okay? This is assuming that you're the 100% owner here. It's a $20,512 payout in this model at 6.5%. At a 4.5%, it goes up to $26,530. So that 4.5% difference is $6,018. Divide that by 12, and it's a $501.50 difference every single month in your pocket. Not necessarily insignificant. I mean, $6,000 a year, I mean, that matters, especially in this calculation right here. But either way, I mean, your total monthly payout on the 6.5% model is $1,709, all right? And then at 4.5%, it's $2,211. So basically, this is calculating it at a 20% return, which is my bare minimum. Now, obviously for me, I like to get a 30 to 40% if I can. It's a little bit more work to find those types of deals. But if I want to do that, let's just say I bump this up to 375, and we're looking at a 29.25% right here. I mean, obviously, do I want the full $39,123? Of course I do, because going down to 6.5% is $33,104. It's still that $6,000 difference. But at the end of the day, it's like, am I gonna really walk away over $6,000 if it's still a good deal? And what I mean by that is it's a 24.75%. Yes, I want a 30%. There's no doubt about it. But even at 24.75%, it's still above my minimum threshold. So right now, the game that you're gonna have to play is that if 20% is your minimum threshold, then you're just gonna have to find a slightly better deal that's 4.5% better than a deal that you would have gotten 6 months ago at 4.5%. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's just gonna fall on your lap. But what I'm saying is maybe you have to do a value add, or maybe you have to do a new construction, or maybe you just have to really search diligently and make more offers and find something that's gonna pencil out. I can't really solve that for you. But for me, looking at this, yeah, interest rates are having a relatively, I mean, I'm not gonna say significant, but they are having a decent impact on my overall yearly payout. But again, in option one, I'm making $32.60 a month from this Airbnb. In option two, at 6.5%, I'm making $27.59. You know what? $27.59, I'll still take that every single month. And here's the crazy part. Even if I drop this to $300 a night at 6.5%, that's 10.63% cash on cash, which is still a good return. That's still a great return in the stock market. That's still a great return for long-term rentals. I like it over a stock market purchase because I'll still get all of the tax benefits of owning real estate. So yes, do I like a 20% cash on cash return? Of course. But I think the point that I'm making here is that short-term rentals in general have spoiled us a little bit and has entitled us to these high ROIs. But at the end of the day, a 10.63% return, many investors would take that any and all day, especially if they can get the tax benefits that come along with real estate. So what's right for you? Is that $500 a month difference gonna stop you from making that investment? Maybe. Does it pencil out? Maybe. Only you can set your criteria. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm gonna keep investing so long as I'm hitting all of my marks, so long as I'm hitting my criteria, so long as I'm hitting my minimum of 20%. And if I can do that, I'm gonna be a happy camper. You know why? Because if I can lock these up right now and I can cash flow them and still make great income for the next 6 months to 6 years, I can always do a refinance and lower my rate if interest rates ever fall back down to the 2s or the 3s. You'll always have that option to you. So maybe that just means making a little less money and for the next couple years, and only you can decide if you're okay with that. And only you can prevent forest fires. Anyways, that's my mini masterclass on interest rates that are killing Airbnb returns, and should you actually invest in Airbnbs, and is that a bad idea, and are you gonna fail if you do it? Obviously, I don't think so, and none of this is financial advice, as always. So anyways, that's today's video. If you're interested in learning how I invest in Airbnb, if you like what you saw today, if you like my point of view and my philosophies on how to run your Airbnb business and how to establish your short-term rental empire, then consider booking a call with my team over at hostcamp.com and see if my mentorship program is right for you. Okay, that's it. That's my spiel. Oh, also, thanks to Here Vacation Rentals for sponsoring today's video, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.